This week I'm driving the Hyundai Palisade 2020. Alright, inside of the Hyundai Palisade 2020, I'm driving again this week a 3-row SUV. I'm looking to find the best one on the market. I drove the Volkswagen Atlas lately, so this week the Palisade. The Palisade is new to the 3-row SUV market, and for sure it's making some space for itself. This thing starts around 34,500 Canadian and can be top around 54,000. The model I'm driving this week, it's about 54,000. This is the ultimate version, so it's got the V6, the all-wheel drive, and all the equipment you can think of. Under the hood, we've got a V6 3.8 liter, good for 291 horsepower and 262 foot-pounds of torque, with a transmission, 8-speed transmission. Pretty good match for this size of SUV. So far, it's not super powerful, but it gets the job done. Pretty good on fuel too. So far, I'm doing around 10 liters per 100 kilometers, maybe under that. So that's pretty good if I compare it to some other SUVs I drove lately. The Palisade is so far one of the best I drove this summer for fuel economy wise. And speaking of, that range of new SUVs, the 3-rows SUVs, there's a lot of competition out there, and a lot of players. You've got the Ford Explorer, you've got the GMC Acadia, the Chevrolet Traverse, you've got the Honda Pilot, and you've got the cousin of the Hyundai Palisade, you've got the Kia Telluride. So basically the Hyundai Palisade and the Telluride share the same platform, same engine, a lot of things, but they're a little bit different. The Hyundai seek more for the luxury, the classic look, a lot of chrome and a lot of feature inside. The Telluride is more about sportier, it's younger, it's got a younger look to it, and it looks more sport. So instead of having some chrome, you got some black finish. Personally, I prefer the Telluride look, but you've got two good choices for all kind of taste. So this week inside of the Palisade, so far it's been a full week of tests. Even brought the wife and the kids and all that to truly test this 7-passenger. Speaking of the look of the Palisade, outside you got a lot of chrome, you got a big grille, you got some chrome wheel on that ultimate model, and also I really like the headlights in the front. And don't mistake those top lights to be the headlights, but these are not the real headlight. Basically the headlights are in the fog lights placement. And if you can look also on top, these are actually your blinkers, and they're mostly for looks, and these are like signature lights, they like to call it. I think these looks really good, especially the ones on top. The one on top have kind of like a Range Rover feel to it, especially when you're on the side of the Palisade. If you look at on the side, it basically look like a Range Rover. I like it. It gives some character to this Palisade. Overall, it's a good looking SUV, but once again, from my point of view, my taste, I prefer the Telluride. I think the Telluride looks like a mini Yukon, GMC Yukon, for half of the price, and it's more sportier. So if I was looking to buy in between those two just for the looks, I prefer the Telluride. If we take a look inside of the Palisade, this interior is pretty impressive. You know, it doesn't feel like you're inside a $50,000 SUV. You feel like you're in something 80 or maybe 100,000. Look at these seats, the details of the leather and all that. And speaking of the leather of these seats, it's really thick. The thickness of the leathers feel really thick. And these days, most of the new generations of cars, the leather is mostly thinner and thinner, and these type of like thick leather you used to find in old Cadillac or other luxurious car. I really like the feel of these seats. They're really comfortable, and look at the details inside of the doors. This feels really top of the line luxurious wise. Inside you got plenty of space. It's spacious. I like the design of the dash. You've got that line from either your cluster all through the screen. The screen works pretty well. You've got tons of buttons, but I love it. It's easy to use, easy to find, easy to live with. Even if I'm not used to used Hyundai products, everything was easy to find, so it's a big plus for that side of the Palisade. If we go down, you've got the where you shift your gears. Once again, those are push buttons, but they're also easy to use. If we go a little bit down there, you got the good amount of space, storing space. You can switch those cup holders to be removed, so you can have some more free space, and that, I think, was a pretty clever idea to do that. Also, you've got a place for your phone, so you can get recharge. This is awesome. Everything's at the right place, easy to use. And also, you got a USB port. And speaking of USB port, there's a ton of them in the Palisade. Actually, there's at least one for each passenger, each seat inside of the Palisade. So for the family, it's a big plus. If we go back to the dash, you've got those digital cluster. Pretty cool. They're pretty well functional. One thing I don't really like is the RPM cluster. It's it's not clockwise, it's counterclockwise. It's on the other side, and just for me it feels kind of funky, but that's just a little detail. If we step in the back of the Palisade, you've got plenty of space. This one's got the captain chairs. You can also get a bench, easy access also for a back, and in the back you actually have some decent amount of space. These are not, they can be used by adult, maybe not for a long trip, but at least you can fit an adult in the last row, so that's another big plus for the Palisade. Speaking of the trunk, you got good amount of space, normal kind of space for this type of SUV. If you really want to utilize the Palisade, probably you're a family of 4 or 5, and you gotta put down those seats in the back, so you get plenty of cargo space to bring all your stuff, your luggage and all that. But you don't have the space you'll find probably in larger SUV like the Suburban or Expedition Max. Where the Palisade really shine, it's all the option and accessories, all the gadgets you get inside of it. First of all, driver assist and all that, you've got tons of them. These large SUVs, those new generation of minivan, I like to call them, are really made to make it easy to drive for someone who are not used to drive these type of cars, these type of SUVs. Sometimes, if you drove small cars all your life and you step up to these cars, you can be intimidated by driving this size of SUV. But with the Palisade, everything, it's made easy to drive. One of the big feature, it's a big plus. Every time you put your blinker on, one of your either your speed gauge or your RPM speed gauge, depends on the side you're putting your blinker on, it's gonna turn to a screen, and you're gonna get a view of your blind spot. I think it's fantastic. It's right in front of you. It's really practical. I love it. One of other feature I really like about the Palisade is the lane keeping assist while you're on the cruise control. You know, usually these driver aids are not my thing, but inside of the Palisade, I don't know, I like it. At one point, you know, I was on the cruise control and I was like, whoa, is this thing is steering by himself? Because usually, you know, in most other brands, it just keep your car between the lines, or it helps you to kind of like wake you up. You're like, you're on the line, you got a little vibration and all that. But in the Palisade, it really steers for you. And at one point, I'm not saying you're able to do that, but I did. You know, I just let go, I didn't touch the steering wheel, and I took a couple of curves on the highway without touching the steering wheel. After a while, if you don't grab the steering wheel, the Palisade's gonna give you a warning to grab the steering wheel, because it's not meant to do that, but it's able to kind of do it. It's kind of cool, you know, it really works well. You know, it really helps you to stay between your lines. Feature-wise, also, you've got paddle shifters, you know, stuff you'll find in the Mercedes-Benz or something like that, you know. Even the Expedition I drove earlier this year, you know, didn't have those paddle shifter, and it was 85,000. So much, you know, so many equipment. You've got heated and cool seats. You've got plenty of modes you can play with, and so you've got some really cool, neat feature, you know, with the screen. If you play with it, these features are really meant to be, you know, to help you with your family, to make your life easy. One of the really cool thing, you've got the driver talk application on your screen. What does that driver talk? It's basically if you want to talk to your children who sit in the third row, and so instead of like turning your head and start screaming at your kid, you basically have to press on it. So there's a microphone right here. You just have to speak inside of the microphone, and it's gonna basically throw your voice in the speaker of the sound system, and they can talk to you the same way in the back. So it's so pretty cool, you know. Instead of screaming at your kid, you use that feature. You don't have to turn around, be unsafe, and it's easy. They hear you, and the same thing for them. They just have to talk, and there's a microphone in the back who gives you kind of like a feedback from them. Really cool for family use. Kids, listen to me. Kids, listen to me. Another thing too, really cool for road trips, you've got the silent mode. So what does the silent mode? It's example, you're during a road trip, you're you know, doing some you know, distance at night, and everyone is sleeping inside, but you're the driver, you still want to listen to your music, listen to your radio. You press on the silent mode, and basically it turns off all the speaker for the exception of the driver one. I know you're able to do that in most of all the sound system in pretty much any cars with all the settings, but usually you have to dig around to play with, and it's just a pain to do it. In the Palisade, you just have to press a button and it's done. So how is it to drive the Hyundai Palisade? You know, it's pretty good. It's not like driving a real SUV, a real truck, and it's not like driving a minivan. It's just in between, you know. Most of the customer who's going to look to buy something like the Hyundai Palisade, they're really looking for fuel economy, cargo space, be practical, you know, and all that. So I think on that side, the Palisade really deliver. But if you're more a car enthusiast, you're looking for handling, having fun, and also, you know, having some big power under the hood, that's probably not the case for the Palisade. Something really cool also about the Palisade, you got those different drive modes, you know, right here next to your gear shifter, I could say, you've got that knob, you know, with a bunch of options. So the kind of like the normal mode for the Palisade. It's the comfort mode. So once you put it in comfort, you know, it drives pretty much normally, and you get after that the eco mode. So if you want to save on fuel, so it's going to reduce a little bit the performance and all that. So if you want to keep it like eco-friendly and having better fuel economy, you put it in eco. And then you have a sport mode, you know. And then, you know, a pretty funky thing about these modes, every time you switch it, your cluster switch color and mode and all that. And it's really funny when you put it in sport. When you put it in sport, you know, right after the eco is all green and all soft, you know. Then you put it in sport, it's like boom, explosion, all red, you know, and it feels like it's ready to like murder someone. It's kind of funny. I like those little like graphic in your cluster. I think you know, it brings some, you know, fun to the Palisade. And still, speaking of the drive modes, you got the smart mode. So basically the smart mode will adapt itself to the way you're driving your Palisade. So if you're more aggressive, it's gonna, you know, tune your engine and all that to be a little bit more sport. And if you're a little bit easier on the pedal, it's gonna put it more in eco mode. So the smart mode is really a mode that can be used daily, you know, if you don't want to play with all the modes. Speaking of these modes, also you've got some modes for your all-wheel drive system. You've got the snow mode, the mud, and sand. These are all practical in those conditions, gonna play with your all-wheel drive, your transmission, and the mapping of your engine and all that. So it helps you in those conditions. Something again, it's missing in the Palisade, and we don't find also in the Volkswagen Atlas I drove a couple of weeks ago. There's no towing mode. So a lot of people who's looking to buy these type of large SUVs with 3-row are looking also for towing. There's a lot of them who like to tow you know, small trailers or little campers and all that. I don't know why they're not including those, you know, towing mode. I wouldn't feel confident towing more than 4,000. If you're close to 5,000, maybe you should consider something who's more capable. I think it's not the right tool for this kind of job, especially with no towing mode and all that. So if you're looking to tow maybe 2,000, 3,000 pounds, it will do the job. But if you're close to the 5,000, you should consider something with more power, and you know, it's more suited to tow that amount of weight. You know, overall, the Palisade delivers a lot for your money. You know, if you're looking at all the equipment inside and all the quality of the interior, you'll find it's something you'll find in something double of this price, or maybe even triple of this price. So you got a lot of option, a lot of feature for a low cost. So that makes the Palisade a real competitor to consider while you're looking to buy a 3-row SUV. And also, you know, Hyundai has got one of the best warranty in the business, so that's another big plus for the Palisade. So overall, you know, a pretty good 3-row SUV. From my point of view, you know, I prefer again something like the Expedition or the Tao or the other real SUV like that. My point of view, you know, while I'm driving these cars and all that, there's a car or an SUV for everyone. Maybe I didn't like the way it drives, maybe there's not enough power for me, but you know, overall, you know, there's always a car for a certain type of person. So for me, maybe I need something more truck. It feels more like a real truck. But most of the customers are gonna look for these type of 3-row SUVs. They're gonna be really happy with the way it feels, the way it drives. It's easy. There's a lot of feature to help you. You know, the typical buyer for these type of cars will love it. Guys like me, I drive trucks all the time. Of course, I will prefer the feeling of a SUV who's based on a pickup truck. So overall, you know, the Palisade, if you think it looks big but you need all that amount of space, you should drive it, because once you're behind the wheel, it feels small and easy to drive, and it's a real competitor in that 3-row segment.